Annie, what do you think this war is really about?
Very interesting what you both said. And I think what I would add to that, which very much speaks to today, is that the CIA, in fact, had many ups and downs over the decades from its creation right after World War II until this moment in time and then on 9/11. And so it's been like an accordion experience of power being taken away from the CIA and then being grabbed back. Because the CIA has always historically been the president's hidden hand. It has been the way in which the White House can execute executive power without having to follow the laws of war that the military does. So military is a code called Title 10. CIA is a code called Title 50. And while that may sound a bit wonkish, it is important to understand because Title 50 essentially, as Andrew can speak to, gives the president authority under classified presidential directive to change any rule he wants that suits him for an operation at hand, which gets us precisely to where we are today.
So, as far as I understand, there was the Shah, the sort of royal leader who was in power. He was overthrown in the late 1970s by Khomeini. Khomeini galvanized people to believe in his way, and he's been in power ever since.
It gets complicated because Khomeini, with an O, was the original leader of the revolution and was later replaced by Khamenei with an A.
Okay, there's two.
But no, that is
They're both 100%. The supreme leader.
Yes.
And this speaks to the revolutionary nature of Iran, which has been, taking place since 1979. In the news today, people hear the IR, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And it's so important to understand that word revolution because and you can speak to this better than any of us, but Iran has been holding on to this idea that, or rather the regime has, that we are the revolutionary force against America. That is why the chant is always death to America. The wound of pre-1975, the wound of America meddling and having the Shah as its puppet is as inflamed or was as inflamed 2 days ago as it was the day after the revolution in 1979.
I think that's probably important context we missed, which was the US got involved in the Shah and how he governed Iran.
It's a fascinating period. In 1951, so basically under the Iranian constitution, the Shah, the king, has the authority to select the prime minister with the consent of parliament. The consent part is really nominal. And so Mossadegh, who is a senior member of parliament and also a member of the previous royal dynasty, is distantly related, this elderly statesman who the Shah, out of sort of courtesy after having gone through a successive list of prime ministers, says, okay, I'm going to appoint him prime minister. So he wasn't democratically elected. He was elected to parliament, but from there, the Shah selected him to be prime minister. Mossadegh nationalized the oil company, the Anglo-American oil company, which was owned primarily by the British. This angered the British, who in turn blockaded Iran's ports and basically shut down its oil industry, and creating a national crisis. And Mossadegh was sort of amassing additional powers within himself, for himself, basically overstepping the authority that he had, even though he had the support of a good deal of the public, as it became obvious that this was a bad move, especially in the eyes of Iran's international trading partners, and it was causing Iran to be isolated. There was pushback towards him, and then he was removed. The British MI6 had wanted to overthrow him, basically get him removed, and they tried to recruit the United States to help. President Truman refused to engage in this earlier. Eisenhower comes in, is more receptive under CIA Director Allen Dulles to actually engage in this, called Operation TP Ajax, led by Kermit Roosevelt, who is the CIA agent officer tasked with this. And then the Americans and the British basically help foment a crowd that is a part of the movement that removes Mossadegh. Now, whether it's a common, I think, a misconception that the U.S. CIA was behind it. The British had a bigger role in this. The Americans were more of the junior partner, but they became sort of the public face of it. Mm-hmm. But Mossadegh was not this overwhelmingly popular, democratically elected figure either. The history is more complicated. And regardless, there were many prime ministers after him. And so he was known as a nationalist because he believed that Iran's oil should be nationalized and not really beholden to British interests. And that created a lot of resentment. and animosity. But that began the U.S.-Iranian relationship really solidified when the Shah returned. He didn't leave, really. He just sort of took himself out of the country for a bit, but he never stepped down. And while this was all being resolved, then he comes back, and then the U.S.-Iranian relationship continues all the way through 79.
So the UK and the US have been meddling in Iran for a long time and kind of, exerting their will.
The UK since the 19th century, by far. The UK has been the dominant colonial force in modern Iranian history.
And they lose that power in the sort of 1980s, early 1980s, because the Khomeini comes in.
The British lose that power with the fall of the empire in the 1940s after World War II, and then the United States in 79, exactly.
And then since then, the UK and the US haven't been able to sort of exert control in their will over Iran. And
Zero. There's not even an embassy there because, of course, they took our embassy or they took over the embassy. I mean, it's been like ground zero of nothing for the CIA's power, for any American power, really for any Western power.
We call it a black box.
Yeah.
It's a rogue nation. It's a black box of information. A rogue nation is one of a handful of countries around the world that follow no international norms. North Korea is a rogue nation. Belarus is a rogue nation. Cuba is a rogue nation. Venezuela was a rogue nation. These countries that completely stand separate from the norms of an international society. And in Iran's case, it also became this black box where it did not allow foreigners in, especially not Westerners. It closed down its embassy. The traditional methods for collecting intelligence were very difficult. And geographically, it's so far away and so far outside of the sphere of influence for the United States that in terms of intelligence and military prioritization, it just fell to the bottom of the list.
And yet look exactly where it is. It's right in the middle of the East. And to Benjamin's point, oil, oil, oil. It's always about oil. There's always a component of oil.
And there are so many other oil options in that region besides Iran, right? Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar. They've got, the United States could partner with other Arab countries to get what they wanted without having to deal with Iran.
So explain to me in simple terms why Trump right now has decided that this is the best time to attack Iran. I want to start with you, Andrew. What's your point of view on that? The full picture of what his motivations.
I think the question that you just asked is the most prescient question that we will talk about today. Why? Why now? Why is it being communicated the way it's being communicated? Why was it executed the way it was executed? So why is now the best of all times? I frankly don't think it is. I think that's the narrative that's being communicated to the world and to the public. What Donald Trump did in attacking Iran goes against what the ODNI report assessed for the most likely threats against the United States in the ODNI's 2005 threat assessment. It goes against the Department of War's 2026 National Defense Strategy, and it goes against the White House's national security strategy. These massive doctrinal annual assessments for how the United States will protect national security. The attack against Iran goes contrary to all three of those in terms of priority and action. So why now? Why the way that we've done it? I can't answer it in any kind of logical way.
What's the non-logical answer?
It's a distraction. It's international pressure with Israel. It's a cheap win after a series of losses. It's a last-ditch effort before he understands that Donald Trump and his party will lose control of the House in the midterms this year.
I have a little bit of a different take, shall I?
Mm-hmm.
I believe the current administration is led as a completely top-down situation. In other words, like sole presidential authority. This current president is very enraptured with power and with prowess, with effectiveness. And on the heels of Maduro and maybe even the cartel leader in Mexico, I believe that the current president saw a moment of intense weakness that had been building, no doubt. And in warring in general, when looking at it theoretically like someone like myself, the decapitation strike is the ultimate strike. It's literally like it sounds it comes from cut off the head of the snake. And that is exactly what just happened.
Why? Why though? Why did he do that?
Well, I cannot tell you why, but I can tell you what we all know that this happened. So if you reverse engineer what happened, I think there's only one conclusion, which is that I would think the current president had wanted to do this and was waiting till he had the intelligence part of it is beyond remarkable. Like how the CIA and NSA and, probably DIA and NGA, all of these intelligence agencies, of which there are many, not just the CIA, were able to get that information to the president in that exact moment and make that strike and decapitate the leadership that has been in power since 1979.
When they talk about the motives here, Trump will often cite nuclear weapons as the motive, saying he didn't want Iran to get nuclear weapons. Is that what's going on here in your point of view?
The 2025 National Threat Assessment that was produced by the ODNI in March, so less than a year old, specifically says that Iran was unlikely to pursue the development of nuclear enrichment or nuclear weapons. That was the assessment of the ODNI. And that instead, their primary concern was that Iran was going to focus resources into the research of biological and chemical weapons. So the fact that in March of 2025, the ODNI, the assessment of all intelligence agencies, said Iran is not working on a nuclear weapon. And then, after the strike in June of the same year, where we dropped bunker busters in Fordo, further obliterating their nuclear enrichment capability and obliterating their program, we have two documents that say they're not developing it. We have another series of attacks that says it's obliterated, and yet we're still saying that we need to attack Iran because of WMD. We've heard that story before. We've heard that WMD is that the concern of WMD is a just cause for war, and that was when we invaded Iraq in 1992.
So what do you think the real motivation there is, therefore is?
It's very similar to what Annie is saying, that we have a current administration that is president down. It's fascinating if you read the official documentation, because when you read the Department of War's national security strategy, what you hear more than any other word is Donald Trump. Our president, Donald Trump, is leading America through our president, Donald Trump, the great Donald Trump. It's incredible. When you hear the speeches that come out of Marco Rubio's mouth or Pete Hegseth's mouth, what do you hear more than any other term? You hear the name of the president. Usually you hear we or the government or this administration. It's not around a personality. So it's a very interesting situation because there's so much of a person at stake here, and everybody surrounding the office of the president is only there because they are kissing the ring of the personality in the center.
And
Benjamin,
I'm going to add to that further just for a moment, if I may, because on that point, the button on that is that I watch the current president's speeches to sort of, discern things. And you can often get your answer right there. And in one of the speeches, either this morning or yesterday, he mentioned that the Ayatollah tried to kill him. And to me, it's like, that's the tit for tat, again, top down, or you could say schoolboy sandbox. I say that as the mother of two boys. This human behavior that is way outside the norm of, intelligence reports and assessments and these long monographs that may or may not actually be effective. I mean, the biggest surprises of the past 40 years, the Berlin Wall falling and 9/11, were completely unseen by any intelligence report. So there is an argument that those intelligence reports are as good as a coin toss.
So I want to come to that point because the very fact that we have an Islamic Republic is a direct result of a failure of American intelligence to see that threat as early as 1976, 77, a failure to inform then President Carter to take the necessary steps to support the Shah and to neutralize that threat. So the United States track record in Iran for the last 40 or 50 years is abysmal when it comes to intelligence and when it comes to statecraft. And so there's that legacy, number one. Number two, October 7, 2023, the Hamas attack against Israel changed the dynamic entirely. That attack surprised Israeli intelligence, it surprised Americans, it surprised almost anybody watching. Nobody thought Hamas was going to do that when they did it and the means in which they did it. So all of a sudden that forced a recalibration, a recalculation of what's at stake, what could happen. If we wait for an imminent threat till we see actually the sign outside the door, it's too late. So from the president's perspective, to answer your original question, why now, why do this? I believe the October 7th attacks, and it's not at the behest of Israel necessarily, it's the idea that Iran, we know, finances Hamas, subsidizes Hamas, trains Hamas, equips Hamas, provides logistical support on many levels so that Hamas can be what it was, and Hezbollah also. So you have these destabilizing non-state groups in the Middle East wreaking havoc, destabilizing, causing chaos. You're the United States. You're also dealing with a nuclear threshold state. So Iran may or may not have a nuclear weapons program, but they exceeded the 20% enrichment that they were allowed to do under the non-nuclear non-proliferation treaty. They violated IAEA safeguards. They lied. So you take all of this together. This is a regime that can't be trusted, that chants death to America, which is more than Saddam Hussein ever did, and is funding groups that that up until 9/11, Iran was behind more acts of terror that cost American lives than any other state or non-state group in the world. 9/11 changed that, but up until that, the Marine barracks bombing in the 1980s, terrorist attacks throughout Europe, South
US
America,
Embassy.
U.S. Embassy, absolutely, the USS Cole, right? So this is we've been at war from the president's perspective with Iran since they took our hostages, for which they've never atoned for. They've never been held to account for. So if you take that calculus and then now we're in a post-October 7th world with a nuclear threshold state, what happened that changed was last year's 12-day war in June created an opportunity, weakened Iran enough and its proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, weakened. If there's an opportunity to finally address this 47-year-old conflict, this was the window to do it. That is why I believe, rightly or wrongly, the president took the action when he did.
That doesn't make it the best window. And that's what we're being told, is that it was the last best window.
I don't think it was the last best window, but it was a window, or at least
agree.
from their perspective, it was a window. You've got everyone weakened. You've got the regime less popular than it's ever been. I mean, we saw the protests in January that led to the bloodbath that, upwards of 30,000 people killed on January 8th and 9th. This was, this regime is at its lowest point, both in terms of domestic credibility and soft power and ability to use proxies to carry out its will. Why not strike it now would be the logic.
I mean, I can give lots of reasons why you wouldn't strike it. It's violating international law. It sets a dangerous precedent. It creates instability. There are Americans dead, Emiratis dead, Saudis dead. For what? For something that was already on the precipice of dying itself.
It's been dying for 40 years.
So why not
though?
let it run its course?
Because what more damage is it going to do? What more October 7th can we see?
Arguably less than anything that's already been done. So it's like taking action it's like putting down the dead dog after it's done all of its damage.
I don't think that you could say to the families of the 30,000 some people who were murdered by the regime just earlier, in January, that it's a dead dog. I think they would disagree.
It's their country, it's their people, it's their decision. It's their right to self-determination.
I'm not saying it's correct what was done. I'm just simply saying the facts of that, which I agree with, unilaterally, that the weakened situation was perceived by this administration as the moment to strike.
Agreed.
And what is done is done.
Agreed.
And so I think what's more interesting to me is, observing how America is dealing with this. I mean, we are in our own crisis, America, our own serious crisis. And there are crises around the world, particularly in this area. And without having a crystal ball, none of us know. And I think that what will happen in the next 2 weeks will be profoundly telling. Interestingly, people will say, this was a good move or this was a bad move, which in and of itself is a bizarre theater because your point is correct. You've got, America taking action in a place that's not its
That's
backyard.
a sovereign country.
Yes. And to your point, you've got, decades of a menace that is now off the table.
I would disagree with that.
Maybe.
Exactly. We don't know.
Yes.
And the worst part is that in the lead up to this, Iran's relationship with Russia and China and other countries that are successfully countering American influence worldwide had grown closer than ever before.
I think they're fair weather friends that just turn on them in a second.
What are you concerned about,
Yeah.
Andrew?
So there's a number of things here. So first of all, with the removal of Maduro in Venezuela, which happened less than 60 days ago, and now the killing, the assassination of a leader,
The decapitation of the regime.
which was the same thing you did here when you rendered Maduro, right? It's a decapitation of a regime.
That's different. I would say if you're going to, extract someone, you haven't killed them, so that's not decapitation.
That's basically
extraction.
swapping out the CEO. This is completely reforming the company. Or at least
I
trying
agree
to.
with that because they were different countries, they operated in different ways. But when you attack the leadership, when you attack the head of state, that is protected under international law. Because when you do that, you open the gates for everyone.
Of course.
What is at the heart of your concern? Because it sounds like you're saying that this wasn't the right time to do this. And so what are the unintended consequences that you're foreseeing?
So there is a domino effect that happens with every decision that the United States makes. And now that we have essentially taken this military action against a sovereign country, it opens the door for all sorts of other countries to just unilaterally choose when they're going to take action against another sovereign. We have created more opportunity for more rogue nations, which is a greater abandonment of an international community, which destabilizes our global trade, our economics, our sense of personal security. The Americans are less secure now than they were 4 days ago. They're targeted now more than they were 4 days ago. And if we are coming to the conclusion that we need to make things worse before we can make things better, that's a conversation I guess we can have, the debate we can have. But with the crisis that we have here at home, with the concerns that exist, with the stated priorities.
What crisis here at home?
We have an economic crisis here at home, an immigration crisis here at home. We have a crisis of politics here at home. Like the United States is.
I would just say it's tribal warfare here at home. I mean,
Okay.
I watch it and it's just very, very, very dangerous. Keep going.
No. It's just now we have just exacerbated that even more. And we've exacerbated that more with an ally in the Middle East that just got done carrying out one of the most destructive attacks in history against Gaza.